Or are we actually
Well,
going live?
yeah, we are live just now. So, hi,
didn't know.
Tracie. Nice
Hi
to
there.
nice to see you. I think the last time I saw you was Manitowoc Rally.
Yes, and my dog's gonna keep barking. Everybody, if everybody missed Justice, you don't have not much to miss. She's still barking out there. So
Uh, the last time I saw you, I think you were saying that either that week or just after you weren't feeling too well, but hopefully you're feeling a lot better now.
I am feeling better. I'm still not 100%, but I'm doing better. I still have some issues and have some therapy that I'm doing, and I have little things I have to deal with, but I'm doing better. But I have to be really careful about stress and about getting overwhelmed with things, because that tends to put me in a place where I start to get more dizzy. And so I've been trying to lead a very calm lifestyle lately, and I've been doing pretty good. I have bad days, as anyone would, but overall I'm limiting my stress, and that helps. So that's helped a lot.
Yeah, but how easy is that when you follow the plights of Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey? How easy is it to stay calm?
It's not as hard when you stay off social media. So I am not on social media very much anymore. I don't pay attention to it as much. And I know recently there have been some emails that have been released, and it just came to my attention like yesterday. So I was kind of looking at some of that stuff, and that's the first time I've really looked at anything in a while. So, and I haven't gotten through much of that. I was thinking about, I'm gonna have to look up some videos or something to get up to date on everything that's been released. But other than that, I've just stayed away from it. I talk to Carla to see how she's doing. I still talk to Sandy every now and then. I check in on Monpa, and I still talk to Brendan. I haven't talked to Steve in a while, but I still email with Brendan regularly. So, that's the stress-free part of it.
Sure. And just to put us really in the picture, I mean, obviously you're at the rally. How far is it for you to get to the salvage yard? How far?
A little over 2 hours.
Wow. So that's you're about 100 mile away then.
Yeah, and that's why I've been there so many times. But obviously, I haven't been there since the last rally, so it's been a while. Yeah, this is the longest I've gone without seeing everybody up there since the documentary came out.
Yeah.
And
just for the sake of regularity, I mean, when did you first start following this case?
I watched it. Okay, again, my memory. I'm still struggling with my memory, so I can't remember what day it was released. But I watched it, I believe, on Christmas Eve.
Right.
Good Christmas Eve entertainment to watch.
Yeah.
And then I watched it again because I told my husband he needed to watch it with me. So we watched it again the day after Christmas. And it was by the next day or two that I just went looking on Facebook for a group or anything, and there wasn't anything at the time. Wow. And I think the next day is when I contemplated making my own Facebook group because I really wanted to talk about this case. Mm-hmm. And the next day is when the first group went up, and I joined that one. I became an admin within a week and just went from there.
I mean,
I know, hard to believe from watching a documentary that could all happen, And, yeah.
I mean, I certainly remember early on when I got in touch with the Facebook group, there was yourself and Wendy Keenan was another, with a legal background, if you like.
She's a lawyer. She's an actual lawyer.
Yeah.
I'm just I'm basically a detective today, but usually I'm basically a lawyer. But but Wendy is an actual lawyer.
Yeah, but I mean, you've obviously. Not just studied the law in general, but also studied how law is practiced in Wisconsin,
right?
Which would be somewhat different to how people might expect law to be practiced, or is it generally the same all over America?
Wisconsin just has a lot of weird laws, which isn't uncommon. I read a lot of. I'll look at laws from a lot of states, and a lot of states have their own quirks when it comes to the law. I can't say Wisconsin's necessarily different, but we do definitely have some weird laws, or we have a weird structure, the way our laws are written. They're just very convoluted, and hard to understand. And I just got used to it from reading so many law books. And this was a lifetime ago for me. This was when I went to college. So this was in my early 20s. And 20 years later, I never knew that would finally come in handy. You know, I was finally able to use all that, you know, useless legal knowledge to do something that was helpful for people.
Right. And so is this sort of, you're describing this sort of convoluted legal system. Is it just something that's grown arms and legs? It started off as a good idea, and then, you know, suddenly it got amended here, it got amended there, and then somebody added something else in. Is that
there's always stuff that's being added, but most of the basic laws have been around for a long time. Mm-hmm. And again, my illness has made my memory really bad. So I get dates and stuff that are really hard for me now. I get very confused. But, you know, we're in the Court of Appeals right now. And this structure for the Court of Appeals has been around since, I believe, the 1890s.
Yeah.
Between the 1870s and 1890s is when it first started. And then I think when it grew into what it is today. So this has been our system for 120 years.
Yeah. And really, I suppose, you know, I'm watching at the moment that thing on Netflix about the 14th Amendment, and part of me says, you know, the actual what was written was all very good. It's how it's interpreted is the problem,
and that's what the judges do, and that's what judges do, and that's why you see different rulings from different judges when it comes to the same law or what seems like the same law, and why it's interpreted one way by one judge and interpreted a different way by another judge. And it shouldn't be that way. But it is really hard to put the letter of law and apply it to every single possible situation that could come up. And so that's why we have judges. And unfortunately, I said, judges don't always see things the same way. And that's why, you know, lawyers when they get accustomed with the judges in the area, when they start working in a certain area, they know which judges they want. They know which judges to stay away from, because they just know, they learn how they interpret things. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be more uniform. You know, it shouldn't be a guessing game where, you know, I've seen cases where the same people are convicted of the same crime that they committed together, and yet you get vastly different outcomes because they had different lawyers, they had different judges. And that's where the system really gets screwed up. And you should be able to appeal and say, hey, he was tried for the same thing I was, and he got 2 years in prison and I got 20 years. You should be able to go and say that. And yet the appellate court will be like, sorry, you know, that's just too bad. And that's, I mean, there's so many problems with our legal system, but that's a big one. It's just the unfairness and the randomness sometimes of decisions and the opinions that come out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I remember when I was learning to drive, and down in Cheltenham, it was well known there were 3 examiners. If you got one of the examiners, you're more likely to pass. If you got one examiner, they never ever passed anybody. But that was actually, as we discovered, almost like a conscious decision to do that, because they didn't want lots of learner drivers suddenly hitting the roads. But you know, I get the idea that, you know, that there are judges that will interpret the law one way when in fact, you know, as you say, somebody else will interpret it in a different way. And in their interpretation of the law, it would sometimes seem as if they come up with their own particular reason why they've interpreted it one way.
Right. And that's what they will use, either previous case law or they will use actual statutes. But even when they use the actual statutes, you will see judges read them differently. They'll interpret them in a different way. They're like, that's not what it says. It says this. But you'll get another lawyer. And we saw this a lot in Brendan's case, especially when you had judges that you can't figure out, how can you be so far apart? When you have judges that are saying, this is the worst travesty of justice I've ever seen. It makes my skin crawl. These detectives make my skin crawl. To judges that say, I don't see anything wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with it at all. It's like, how can you be that far apart? And you're talking about senior judges who have been on the bench for a long time. That's why they're appointed to the federal circuit, because they've done their time. They've been on the bench for a long time. And yet How can you look at the same set of facts and interpret them so differently? And I don't have an answer for how to fix that, unfortunately.
I was going to ask you, going back to particularly Brendan's appearance, assisted obviously by Drizzen and Nyrider at the Court of Appeals, the same stage that Steve is at now, yeah?
Well, no. Well, yes, sort of. Well, okay. Brendan's was federal.
Yeah.
So Brendan did have a state appeal, but that was before Making a Murder even came out. When Making a Murder came out, he was in the middle of his federal post-conviction petition.
Right.
And Steve is still state right now. Steve would probably not have much luck trying for a writ of habeas corpus like Brendan did.
Mm-hmm.
Steve's case is just different. And, Brendan's, they basically, put all their eggs in one basket with the false confession with Brendan's case.
Yeah.
And that they wouldn't be able to do that with Steve's case. I just don't see that there would be any avenue under federal law that would grant Steve relief. I think you would be better off. Well, KZ has already said, she's gone on the record and said that she would rather file successive state petitions than ever try in federal court.
Yeah.
And she now, for Melissa Kalasinski's case, she went to federal court. But again, that you're talking about a false confession. That's a different circumstance.
Yeah.
But for Steve's case, I just don't see I think it would be a waste of time to try to go that route. He'd be have a better chance of petitioning directly to the U.S. Supreme Court, which in that case, I don't think he'd have any traction either. I think she has to win it on a state level. Mm-hmm. She has to. Otherwise, I just don't think there's any relief for him available at the federal level, just because of how hard it is to win a habeas corpus case. Yes. Yeah.
Well, we've seen that certainly with Brendan. I think, as Steve Drizzen quite rightly pointed out, this case is just too big a case. Mm-hmm. Too big a heater. And as you say, we saw all the way through the Seventh Circuit and the en banc, as you say, the sort of contrast between one side and the other. As you say, they're miles and miles apart in thinking. So you've basically allayed slightly my fears, and that was that some of the judges that looked at Brendan's appeal, the ones that gave this famous sort of 2-paragraph assessment.
Right.
So none of those judges are involved in Stephen's case.
No. And the only reason that they would be is if Steve loses and then Kathleen tried to file a writ for a federal petition of habeas corpus, but she won't do that. She will file another state petition if it comes to that. She will find more evidence. And right now, that's what these emails. Yes. Now, here's the thing. I know that I might be jumping ahead. I don't know if you're going to cover that. You were going to ask me this, but like these emails that have come out, they're obviously newly discovered evidence.
Yes.
The big question will be, and this is always the case when it comes to newly discovered evidence, the question always is, could they have been found if due diligence had been used? So if the lawyer had used exercised due diligence, could these have been found? Mm-hmm. It's not just that, it was finally just discovered now. It's like, well, if the lawyer would have, like I said, exercised their due diligence, that's what they use in the legal term.
Sure.
And now that's going to be a question. It'll be a question of that. This is pretty obscure, but having to file a FOIA request for emails is not a traditional thing that lawyers would do. So I don't think that the court would look at it and say, well, if you would have exercised due diligence, you would have found these emails sooner, because that is definitely not your normal route to getting information investigating a case.
Yeah.
So I don't, that would be a hurdle you'd normally have to overcome, but I don't think that would be the case. So the question is, if Steve's petition is denied and he's denied outright, she could use these emails for a successive petition.
Sure.
Which she probably would, because it is newly discovered evidence. And again, if you get a judge like Judge S, she would probably say, oh, it could have been discovered earlier, because she just doesn't care about the law at all.
Yeah.
She'll interpret it whatever way it is, so Steve loses. That's how her interpretation works. Mm-hmm. But I don't necessarily think that would happen with every judge. I think some judges would look at this and be like, okay, that's asking a bit much for lawyers to think to FOIA request emails between a sheriff's department and lawyers and things like that.
Yeah.
So that would be one option. But if Steve wins on the appeal, and then we have to remind people, I'm sure everyone knows this, but remind people that this appeal is only to determine whether Steve deserves an evidentiary hearing. Mm-hmm. This is not about overturning his conviction at this point. That's not what the Court of Appeals is going to do. They are hopefully going to order an evidentiary hearing where all of this evidence that she's already uncovered can be presented. So here's the issue with that. You usually have to stick to whatever the court allows you to present in this evidentiary hearing. Kathleen presented 50 claims at least in the successive, motions and petitions that she filed. There are so many claims. The Court of Appeals, if they order a hearing, they are going to order it on specific grounds. They're going to pick out certain claims that have what they believe may have merit. He's not going to win on everything. Sure. So an evidentiary hearing is not like a second trial. No. They can't completely retry the case, or it's not a complete defense. You have to stick to the things that are questionable. Obviously, some of the best chances are with the bone situation. That'd be one of the best, chances for him to get an evidentiary hearing. I still can't believe that was denied, because to this day, I do not understand how the judge could put that she believes there was no bad faith when she did not actually hear anything from the people involved.
Yes.
How can you determine that something was not done in bad faith without putting them on the stand and finding out why they did what they did? She has no idea why they did it.
Yeah.
So for a judge to take that kind of latitude is just flat out wrong. So that is probably the issue that he has the biggest chance of having a hearing. Some of the Brady issues, possibly. So the problem is anything going to be allowed in this hearing that would allow Kathleen to present these emails that we have found now? Because that's new. That hasn't been presented in any of the briefs.
Sure.
I don't know if it's something that she could file a motion prior to a hearing and say, I would like to include this newly discovered evidence. I don't know if that's something that she would do, or if she would have to wait until she filed another petition. I wish I knew. It's something that it's, just like everything with this case, nothing is normal. No. Nothing happens the way that it usually happens in a court process or in the actual courtroom. Everything is like, this is the first time I've ever heard of this before, so it's really hard to say what she would be allowed to present. Obviously, everything that's already been covered, yes, that's all fair game. Anything that's in her briefs, but to present anything on top of that, I don't even know if it's possible for them to let her do it, or if she filed some type of pre-hearing motion, if it would be allowed.
Sure.
Because if that is helpful in making this decision, especially when it comes to the bones, because I didn't get to read it closely, but I saw there was one from Norm Gahn specifically asking for tag numbers that involve those bones. Mm-hmm. If that information is relevant to the issue at hand, then if it's allowed, then I would think that a judge would say, yeah, I want to see everything, or I want to hear everything. We don't want to go through this all again when we have this information now, but I don't know for sure.
Well, actually, it's funny, you've touched on exactly that point. Do we want to go through all this again? When you first started following the case,
I still have my. Can you read it? Oh, you probably can't read it. Justice for Stephen Avery.
Hold on a sec. I can do this. If you keep it up there, I can.
There you go.
There you go.
So this is still my daily water bottle. It's for Stephen Avery. So always use that.
And it's Wisconsin brandy in it?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's a shame. No, you kind of touched on the thing I was going to ask about. It goes through this all again. When you first started following this case, and you saw how Kathleen Zellner got involved, and then was filing motions, and it was going up, being things started off okay, I think, with Sukovic in that she did get given some stuff to test, didn't she?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
but then basically since then it's been a constant back and forth between the Court of Appeals and Angie, who seems at times to, in Roll Griffin's words, she seems to act like an assistant district attorney, doesn't she?
Correct.
Did you get any sense that this was going to take so long and it was going to be so stretched out?
I have to say that in the beginning, I knew it would take a long time because people were saying like Steve will be out within a year. I was like, huh, like 3 years maybe. This is even longer than I expected it to take, and that's not all the court's fault. I mean that was, remember, it was Kathleen that kept remanding it back to the other court because she wanted to get all the information in. So it's very rare, and this is why we keep running into these once in a lifetime or once in a one of a kind situations, is because it's very rare for anybody to be filing an appeal during an ongoing investigation.
Yeah.
Usually your cases are long over with and everything before you file these types of appeals. So to file appeal while you're still actively investigating is bizarre. I mean, it's just something that doesn't happen. But in Kathleen's case, at what point do you say the investigation is done? Mm-hmm. There's no end point.
Yeah.
So she had to do something, she had to put something out there, but that's what led to, okay, a few months later, she got new information, and a few months later, she got more information, and now there's still information coming in now. So it's a very weird legal situation that it got to, where we had to do all these remands and all these extra things. And I'm sure the courts are not happy about it either, but it is what it is. I mean, because like you said, like I said, there is just no way to determine how long an investigation can be on a wrongful conviction case, because there's always going to be new things. People come forward and more evidence comes to light. All these FOIA requests are being made. So again, imagine if we would have waited until now, till Kathleen first filed.
Yes. Yeah.
So and that's why Kathleen was in a really difficult situation, because she knew she was going to run into some of these procedural problems by not presenting everything at once, but she really didn't have a choice. Mm-hmm. She had to do something.
Sure. I mean, would it be fair to say that so far at the Court of Appeals, it's been Judge Paul Riley that's looked at this and seems, to a layperson from 4,000 miles away, he seems to have a grasp as to what's going on, and as so far has proven to be making good assessments, good decisions.
fair choices, because the only thing he denied is something that it was fair for him to deny it. Otherwise, he's been extremely fair, and I hope to continue to see that. Some of Riley's previous rulings give me a little bit of hope that he does seem to be a very fair judge. He does seem to really, he really wants to go by the Constitution, but he's also a judge that understands that the times are changing. Sometimes he's not one of those judges that's so tied to the Constitution that he doesn't realize that sometimes you have to things need to change. Sometimes decisions need to change. Our outlook needs to change. But he's not super progressive. He's not super liberal, but he's just very mindful of both the past and the present, in my opinion. And so that's why I was not really surprised to see his decisions being so fair. But after Judge S, it's like you kind of just begin, and after what happened with Brendan, you just kind of wonder, like, do they just have it out for him and that's it? Mm-hmm. And so nothing I have seen so far from the Court of Appeals has given me any indication that there will be any bias, that they won't be fair.
Yeah.
That could obviously change when I see the actual opinion come out. But for now, I'm not panicking, because if they would have been denying Kesey at everything she tried to do, then I'd be worried. But they didn't, so that's good.
Yeah. Now, the most recent file by Kathleen Zellner was obviously the 25th of June last year, and I think you posted earlier today to say that stuff that was being posted filed back in February of last year is now just being looked at.
Yeah. And it's not what was filed. It's when it was submitted on briefs.
Right, sure.
Because that's when it gets to the judge's level, at least. And
Right.
so Steve's case wasn't submitted on briefs until November.
Yes.
And that's the problem. Because if I'm seeing cases now that were from January and February just presented and submitted on briefs, not when they were first filed, because there's always like a 5-6 month gap from the time they're filed to when they're actually submitted. Mm-hmm. If I'm just seeing cases that are January, February that are now being decided, I was like, well, we're talking a year timeline. Now, it's interesting. The Court of Appeals is scheduled to release opinions tomorrow, District 2. Obviously not. I check it periodically to see when they're releasing opinions. And obviously, Steve's not on the list. And I was getting to the point where I thought maybe we could start seeing it. This would be the earliest we would see the opinion, would be in March. I thought May seemed more realistic.
Sure.
Well, that was going on when I was looking 6 months ago.
Sure.
When I finally started looking again, I'm looking at these cases and I'm like, wow, he's like, holy crap. These have been sitting for a year, 13 months.
Yeah.
There were some cases that were 7-8 months waiting time, but they were one issue cases and their opinions were one was 8 pages. And I think the most was 15 pages or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, that's a very easy case. If you're only reading a brief that's 20 pages compared to a brief that's 150 pages, plus all the supplemental briefs, plus everything that was submitted to the circuit court. And, it's just a lot of information that they have to read and they have to go through. Now, today, I actually looked at the cases that are going to be released tomorrow. And some, again, were 7 months. But every brief I looked at, because now I can only go by how long the brief is of how complicated a case is. Every brief I looked at was less than 30 pages, I think. I think one might have been 40 pages, but every single one was less than 30 pages. So again, you're talking about cases that just don't have the complexity that Steve's has. Sure. There were a couple cases that are from just this year, from January and February of this year, but they must be either emergency cases that have to be decided right away, or they're ones that have like very basic and they're just like, let's just get this out of our way. Because it's such an easy decision to make. Because one of them was like a 15-page brief. That was it. So, and when I looked, it was filed in February. I was like, what? It's a month? But again, if it's something that's really simple, they probably just read through it really quick and are like, let's just dispose of this right away. But in Steve's case, when we're talking about that much complexity, that many pages to read, that many exhibits to go through, all this stuff, I'm thinking like a year is at least it's going to be that, but I would love to be wrong. Yeah. I can't say it for sure because there's no way to know. I don't know how much work they've done on the case. I have no idea. So, they maybe have gotten through a lot of it by this point over COVID. Maybe they went through a lot of it. Who knows? But it's just when I'm seeing these other cases taking that long to decide, and I know how complicated Steve's case is, it doesn't give me hope that it's going to be anytime soon. I would say late summer at the earliest, but it could be all the way till the end of the year.
Yeah. Hopefully they will. I was going to say, I think the judges there on somewhere near 120, 130, 140, 50,000 a year. You would hope that there was some sort of incentive scheme to get through the cases quickly,
well,
but I doubt it.
Behind.
I doubt it.
Yeah, they're definitely behind, and I know they don't want to be behind. So it is possible in the next couple months that they start powering through a lot more cases, and maybe the wait time will go down because a year ago or in 2019, for sure, they were at a 6 to 9 month lead time, I should say, for getting opinions, and now it's like, wow, this is a lot longer. We're talking up to 14 months so far that I've seen, but they'll catch up a little bit now that now things are opening back up and people are at work full time again and things like that. Maybe they'll start going through things faster and everything. And the judges have been working the whole time, but you have to remember for a 3-judge panel, it's hard because they have to discuss these things together. They have to go through everything together.
Yeah. And just the 3 judges, Riley, Neubauer, and the new fella, I forget his name.
I know, I did too. I was just thinking about it the other but before when we were talking about it, and I was like, I don't remember his name, and I can't say I look that closely at stuff. I could find it probably quick enough.
I'll look it up quickly. I've got
Okay.
it bookmarked here.
Yeah, I just saw it too. I just saw it on one of the opinions, and I was like, I just have it. That's my brain. Things go in and out so fast. That's why don't ask me about statute numbers right now or anything, because that's the stuff that gets really jumbled in my head. And
Yeah. Actually, it's not firing up straight away for me, but don't worry. I'll find it. Do you think that it's optimistic to think that with this case having been featured by Netflix to the extent that it is, that there's a good likelihood that obviously Paul Riley has been on this case right from the word go. Sorry, first of all, why have we gone from just one judge looking at it to the three?
well, there's always a 3-judge panel.
Has it? Right.
Yeah, for a criminal appeal, there's always a 3-judge
Right.
panel in the Court of Appeals.
Okay. So that sounds even better then. That so basically it's Paul Riley, the judge that has to write the opinion, but it's the opinion of the three of them.
Well, we don't know if he's writing the opinion or not. It because when they're okaying or they're ruling on motions, it's just whatever judge is in the rotation to be the motions judge. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be the primary. They decide that when they get to their conferences. Once they decide the case, then they'll appoint somebody in the majority. If it's a split decision, somebody in the majority will be assigned to write the opinion. Now, it makes sense that it would be Riley because Lisa Neubauer is the chief judge and she has a lot of things to do. But Riley's the presiding judge and he has a lot to do too. So it could be whoever the third person is, which is just driving me crazy now that I can't think of it.
I know. Because
obviously Gundrum, and we talked about this in my group, that Gundrum should be recusing himself. Now, we haven't seen every official recusal, but I don't know if we would. I don't know if that's something that would be released and on the record. It's not something that happens very often. So
sure.
I'm going through all these judges trying to find another District 2. Did they assign another full-time District 2 judge? Maybe that's why.
There is one, yes.
I'm not seeing him.
District 2, why can't I? Can I click on it? And no, it's showing me who's.
District 1?
It's telling me it's Calumet, Fond du Lac, Green Lake, Kenosha, Manitowoc, Ozarki, Racine, Sheboygan, Woolworth, Washington,
and
Waukesha, Winnebago. Winnipeg. But it's not allowing me to. Oh, hold on a sec.
I have 12. Like, where is it's going to be? Oh, here it is. Judge Jeffrey O. Davis.
That's it.
Yeah. I was like, he was the last one I clicked on. I should have started from the end.
Yeah. Well, it used to be Hagedorn, but then he got promoted. He beat
Court.
Neubauer to go to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, they ran against each other. Hagedorn won by a small margin, but Hagedorn won, and he went to the Supreme Court. And so now this is why we have a new judge coming in, and Jeffrey O. Davis is his name. And I just saw his name, and I'm like, I'm totally drawing a blank.
So we will obviously remain optimistic that there will be a decision as soon as possible from them, and an evidentiary hearing. That evidentiary hearing would go back to a circuit court?
Yes, then it would go back to the circuit court, and it would go back to the Sheboygan courthouse because that's where it's been, even though it's a Manitowoc case. But at that point, that's when Kathleen can request a different judge. The Court of Appeals, in their opinion, might actually remand it back to a different judge. They can do that. But if they don't, and they remand it back to Judge S., then Kathleen can file a motion asking for a new judge. And the reason for that is that, in general, you want to be fair. I know that sounds ridiculous in this case, but if a judge has ruled against you that many times, you really want to have a clean slate and have a different judge look at it. Because if they've overturned her decision, clearly she's not seeing the case the way she should be. And so it's not unreasonable to ask for a new judge to look at it with a different lens.
Sure. I actually had a look at there's actually 5 judges in Sheboygan. and one of them has actually had a run-in with Paul Riley before for doing basically what Angie was doing, which was to disregard even what the prosecutor, the attorney, was saying, the district attorney or the DA's office, and was deciding that that they were going to charge somebody, even though the prosecutors had decided that it was just going to be a misdemeanor or something like that. I can't remember the exact details.
Now, yeah, I don't remember. I don't know. But my understanding is that Kathleen wants it back in Manitowoc for some reason. I don't know why. And I don't know if she's changed her mind on that, because she could have. But I know when she first was looking for a new judge, she wanted it back in Manitowoc. That seems like.
Is there not a risk then that it would be in front of Mark Rohrer?
It wouldn't be. I don't. Well, Mark Rohrer, he's no longer with the office, right? He retired, I thought.
Did he? Oh, right.
I thought he did, or maybe not. Right. I don't know. Okay. I can't remember. Again, I'm brain dead half the time. My brain cells are about 1/4 capacity for remembering things. So that's why all the stuff I talked about regularly, and I can't even remember the tiniest detail or the easiest details. It's very frustrating for me. That's why I had to stop doing videos and stop doing this, is because I can't remember anything and I lose my train of thought, and it's terrible. So I'm doing the best I can, especially when you sprung this on me. I didn't know we were going.
Well, I tell you, you're not doing too bad at the moment, Tracie. You're not doing too bad at the moment.
So I'm doing the best I can with zero preparation.
You're doing fantastic as usual. Now you touched on the emails that rookie AC. That's what's Andy Newton is your name, isn't it?
Well, that's his name on Twitter. Yes.
Yeah. AC rookie
AC is different. AC is somebody different. Andy Newton and AC are different people.
Oh, right. Sorry. Okay. So
AC. Yeah.
So AC has come up with some FOIA'd emails, and what in those emails has sort of piqued Tracie's interest? I just
found out about them because I'm not following anything on social media. I have a different Twitter account for like other stuff, and that's the only one I've been on. I haven't been on my normal one at all. Right. So I know I saw the emails. I saw some of the stuff that Buting tweeted. So I saw the emails about the flyover video.
Yes.
And I saw the one that Norm Gahn sent with the tag numbers and wanting to basically critique Kathleen's theory about Bobby. And I saw the ones where they were commenting about being surprised about the decision coming so soon. And I can't remember what other ones, but I saw a few, and I don't know how many are out there. I have no idea. But if Buting tweeted about it, I saw it because I just went right to, when I saw he tweeted about one, I went to his page and looked for the ones he was talking about. The one about Remacher buying his book. I saw that. So I don't know how many are out there. I was actually going to maybe message somebody to see if there was a link to more or where they're located, or if they're just being released individually. I didn't know.
I actually got sent an email from a Twitter name called Joris, who had, in the FOIA requests, had came across my email, wishing Andy Colburn a happy retirement.
Oh,
but it had gone to Mark Wiegert, who would then forward it to Colburn with the message, "For what it's worth."
Nice. I saw the emails from Colburn, the ones that he wrote, that he was all panicked about the documentary, but he's such an idiot that he just looks dumb. Everything he does makes him look dumber, and I always thought that wasn't possible, but just about everything he does makes him look more ridiculous. Not necessarily more guilty, just more ridiculous. He just looks like a whiny crybaby about everything. And I didn't do this. No matter what they tell you, I didn't do this. I'm like, seriously? Like, you're supposed to be a detective, and that's how I'm basically a detective, and I don't act like that. I'm not even a real detective, and I wouldn't act that whiny. And God, he's just annoying. And he already knew ahead of time that he was going to look bad. What does that tell you? If he's already saying, I'm probably not going to look very good in this documentary. Well, how do you know that unless you already know what you did is shady? He's just, I don't know. He doesn't help his case. He just needs to stop talking, and he'd help his case a lot.
Yeah. I think the interesting one, as you say, apart from the funny ones like Remika buying Butin's book, was this business of the flyover, where Tom Fallon talks about the fact that Kathleen Zellner is pissing him off.
Right.
I mean, I'm sorry, but even amongst work colleagues, in the Department of Justice, I find that slightly offensive that you're referring to a defense lawyer who's trying to do the best for her client and saying she's pissing me off. To me,
that's not the worst thing that a prosecutor will say about a defense attorney. So
I know, but to be caught out with that email, I think, and also the fact that he's talking about that they've got this tape that they need it to work.
8mm tape,
yeah,
or whatever it is, and I hope we can get it to work.
Yeah,
that's crazy, and that's why that's something that's pretty big that proves that they had something. Whether they could get it to work or not is irrelevant. They need to notify the defense that they have this, and the defense should have the opportunity to get it to work if they can't. And so that is a big problem for him to tell Kathleen, oh no, we have just what you have whatever we have, and then turn around and immediately email somebody else and say, hey, I hope we can get that to work. Can you, so that just shows that you knew something existed that the defense did not have. The defense was specifically asking for it.
Yeah.
So you can't use the excuse that, they didn't ask for it. So that's pretty blatant. And so that's something that I wish could be in the motion right now, but unfortunately we have to wait now. But that just, if they want people to stop getting on them about the way they investigated or what they did or their actions, it's like, then they need to start acting like they care about justice, like they care about truth and justice. Because there's nothing I've seen that acts like they care about truth or justice, about either of those things.
Yeah.
They cared about convicting somebody. They cared about specifically convicting Stephen Avery, and they care about keeping him in prison. That's all they've shown. And I get it. If you truly believe he's a murderer, I understand that you want to keep him in prison, but you need to do it fairly. You can't just keep lying and covering things up. That's not how the system is supposed to work. And it makes you lose faith in the system in all levels.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, the ends do not justify the means, do they?
Right. Absolutely. They do not.
No.
That's why even when people are guilty and they plant evidence, that's why it can't be allowed. Yeah. Even though the person is guilty or they did something horrible, you can never plant evidence because it calls into question everything that you've done. It calls into question the integrity of the system. Yeah. And then you can't have confidence in anything when people are doing things like that.
Exactly. One final question, and then I'll let you go because
are there any questions? I haven't been looking at the chat.
Mainly talking about Andy Colburn. Somebody suggesting that you cannot polish feces, which was very good. And somebody said, yeah, but you can roll it in glitter. But no, the thing I was going to ask was this. We know, obviously, back in 2003, it was this hair that tested positive for Gregory Allen that exonerated Steve, okay?
Yes.
Of all the items that Kathleen Zellner has developed, of all the issues that she's raised, what do you think, to put it crudely, is going to be the pubic hair this time round?
In which, you're gonna have to reword that for which thing in the appeal that's in front of them right now, or anything new?
So is it going to be the bones being handed back, the fact that the bullets got wood in it? None of that
doesn't play into anything right now because that's not part of the appeal. But the bones, yes, the bullet and everything, that's not going to go anywhere without having further testing. And that's another issue. It'll be once the hearing is granted, that doesn't mean she's going to be allowed to do more testing. That would be another thing that she'd have to request. And I don't know if they would allow that because that's a separate issue now outside of this appeal. But I think the bones are the biggest issue. They really are, because that's one thing. And there are other things, and I'm sorry, but I just can't remember off the top of my head right now what they are. But there were other things that I think warranted a hearing.
Yeah.
Just going back to what I do remember from Judge S's opinion, she made statements that were completely false as to what she said, that Kathleen didn't do certain things in her brief, which she absolutely did, and she just ignored it. Those are things that bother me about her opinion, that could be a technicality that could get them to overturn the decision about the hearing, because she was saying things that she said Kathleen never gave any examples of this. I'm like, she spent 5 pages giving examples. What are you talking about? Yeah. So those are types of things that I think might have, that's a technicality that might have merit. As far as the Brady violations go, I used to be able to rattle them off, all of them, and now I'm like, what's a Brady violation? I'm like, oh, what? I know that the calendar page was one, and
the CD, rather than, they got the 7 DVDs, but they only got the CD as sort of newly presented for the first time in season 2 of Making a Murderer, didn't they?
Right. And I know there was something in that opinion that was wrong too. That was just technically was legally wrong. And I can't remember what it is now. I'd have to read it again. You can go back to look at it, because again, I've just forgotten everything. But I know there was something in there too. So there are a few areas where they could grant relief and order a hearing. But I think the bones is the most outrageous one, just because again, the judge made a determination that there was no bad faith without having a hearing. I don't understand that at all. How can you decide that? How can you decide their frame of mind when they haven't told you their reasoning for doing it? That's something that's beyond the scope of what a judge is supposed to do.
Yeah. And she tried to present it as if it was Deputy Hawkins that was the mastermind behind all of this. Right. When it was Norm Gowan and Fallon and Uyghur,
From what I remember, she made a lot of assumptions that a judge should not make. Judges are supposed to rule based on facts that are presented, not on making a bunch of assumptions to suit your narrative so that you can deny a claim. Then that's exactly what she did. So I think that's the biggest thing. And honestly, just getting a hearing on anything is a win. But we still have a long way to go after that. And that's the thing, is that if Steve wins the evidentiary hearing, it'll take some time before the hearing will happen. And who knows if it would be open at that point, because they're not allowing people into the courtroom. So I don't know if anybody would be able to see it at the time. I thought that if that's open, I'm going to be there like spending the night so that I get a seat. That is a small courthouse, and I want to make sure I'm there. But now I don't even know if that would be a possibility. But if they live streamed it, that would be awesome, because then everybody could see it. Yes. So that would be one thing, and hopefully that it would at least be live streamed. Now, if Steve wins that, then if he wins at the hearing, that grants him a new trial.
Yeah.
And then they would have to decide if they're going to retry him, which at this point, the case is just garbage. Mm-hmm. There's so much that's wrong with it. And they screwed up the investigation so badly that, again, if he can get a fair jury, which again, I say go to Milwaukee and you'll get a fair jury for sure. I don't know how they could convict him on now that there's been so much tainted with the investigation and so much that's been proven wrong and that shouldn't have happened, with all the evidence that's been uncovered through FOIA requests, through Kathleen's investigation. I just don't know how they could convict him again. But I think they'd probably try, because they just are dead set on the fact that he belongs in prison.
Well, we remember Brad Schimmel saying that, he's consulted with the Hallbacks, and definitely if it needs to go to a retrial, they'd have a retrial.
And that's the thing about that, though, is that the family is never the one that makes the decision. Most of the time, the family's not even given a say in anything. It's a crime.
Why would they? Yeah.
Right. And sometimes they're very unfair to families in that respect, that they do what they want, like when they offer plea deals and things like that, and the family gets really upset about it. So it's just bizarre that they're saying we would prosecute again because of the Hallbacks.
Yes.
Well, your taxpayers aren't going to be real happy about that. Your people aren't going to be really happy, especially if it's proven that there was corruption.
Yes.
There's going to be a lot of issues. So who knows? I'd like to get to that point to find out. We'd have to have his conviction overturned to find out if that would happen. I'd like to get to that. If Steve loses at the evidentiary hearing, then Kathleen will appeal that decision. And then
Yes.
we're starting the appellate process all over again.
Yeah.
So you're talking another year or two of being back in the appellate court. So we're a long way from resolution. I kept hoping that somebody would grow a conscience and come forward by now. That would help speed the process up, but we are still a long way from resolution, unfortunately.
Sure.
And that means
Sure.
Brendan's a long way
Although,
from resolution, because I don't think his attorneys are going to do anything until this appeal is resolved.
yes, absolutely agree with
Yeah.
you, as usual. One final thing, though. I can't help thinking, though, that unfortunately in Brendan's case, to begin with, having been found guilty, and then all of his appeals failed, and then all of a sudden he got a win with Judge Duffin, which was then supported by Williams and Rovner, even though Hamilton dissented, and then it was just loss after loss after loss.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be fair to say that having the case, in Steve's case, remanded back by the Court of Appeals, having it remanded back to Angie twice, they're like the little wins that you need to build up a bit of momentum?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that helps. But I mean, the problem with having to remand the case back was that it always had to go back to Judge S. She didn't have a choice, because it's all still part of the same initiating petition. Everything is still based on that petition that she filed originally in front of Angie. All of the remands, all of the extra motions, all the supplements and the amendments, everything is still part of that original petition that she ruled on. And so that's why I had to keep going back to her. And I think everybody knows that we learned along the way that it was a foregone conclusion that anything that went back to Judge S was going to be denied.
Yes.
It just was not. It was in the cards. So having a few wins here in the appellate court is what we talked about before, is a good sign that at least that we could maybe expect some fairness, or at least some due consideration this time, not just just discrediting everything out of hand and pretending like I don't want to read all this stuff. So, we're just going to say that he's denied and that's it. Like, it seems like that at least some consideration will be taken. While I'm talking here, if anybody asks a question further back, I have the comments open now. So ask your question again and then I will answer it.
Sure.
So while we're finishing up,
I mean, the thing when it comes to Angie, it was, as you say, it was a case of we always knew, we could tell straight away that it was going to be denied. It was just going to be a matter of how long it was going to take her to write the meager amount of opinion that she was going to write, wasn't it?
Right, because it took her a year to write, but not a year. I can't remember how long it took, but it was what, like a 15-page opinion or something like that. It was very short considering all of the things that were presented, because she wrote 90% of the petition off as procedurally barred.
Yeah.
That is going to be the big issue. That is the issue where Steve has a huge obstacle to overcome, is the procedural bar issue. And that's always the case with anybody that's been in the system long enough that they've filed multiple appeals. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm getting a call from someone. I don't know.
I was going to say, it was quite funny how KZ sort of reversed the sort of the thing onto the state by saying that the state is stopped from doing certain things.
Estoppel,
Estoppel is the same as procedural bar, but is that right?
Yeah, a judicial estoppel is just when you're saying that you want to prevent them from continuing to do a certain thing. And I can't remember what they were doing. I can't remember what it applied to at the time.
It was basically just changing the story, wasn't it?
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, it was because they decided to change their story from what they had said earlier, and it's like, no, you cannot do that. That's right. Thank you for reminding me what it was. I couldn't remember. I just remember she used judicial estoppel as a argument. I just couldn't remember what it was she was trying to stop. They changed their story, which you can't do that. You have to stick with what you presented. You can't just change it to fix your narrative, to suit it to your needs. You can't do that.
Yeah. So one final question from me then would be, and I know I said it was one final question ages ago. Actually, I've probably got two, but the main one I'll come to later. This business of the Supreme Court in Wisconsin seems to be quite enlightened recently, due to, I think it was a case called Wierski. Have I got
Yeah.
that right? To do with
That's the one
basically
with the
hide
Brady.
and seek.
Right. That's what the Brady violation. Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
And what
And
that case did was that it put more of the burden back on the state to have to provide discovery as opposed to this whole due diligence thing I was talking about before. That is the big thing, is that at some point the state has to be responsible for their own actions and their own responsibility of turning over materials. You can't expect a defense attorney to conceive of every possible thing they may have, and that we have to stop putting the burden so much on this due diligence of the attorneys, of the defense attorneys, and start putting some of the burden back on the prosecution. That's what Waleski says. Waleski.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Waleski, I think it is.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And did I finally, because somebody's keen to get hold of it. I'm going to let you go very, very shortly. One
That's
final
fine.
question. Did we ever get your opinion as to what nationality?
Yes, you did.
because I think you should be the one that tells the story about this. That when I actually arrived at Manitrock, I got ushered in by Carla. She said, they're all here with Mama Avery. So we went in, and you came along and you said, "Oh, I've got a parcel for you. I'm really keen to see what it is." And what was it? It was Captain.
I said French when we first talked about it, and I didn't know what it was. And I was like, "Why is this a thing? I don't know what is wrong with you guys that you're talking about this for so long." But yeah, I thought French at first. What was the final decision? Did anybody figure out exactly what it is?
I think the final decision was the fact that I must have been wrong. He must be British, because the dude said he was British, so he must be British. I must be wrong.
I know there were some questions that came up, so I wanted to go back now.
Yeah, sure.
I wanted to see if KZ gets a different judge, will she be able to get access to the RAV4 for testing, even though AS denied it? No, probably not. No, that would be something that would have to come up. If Steve wins in the evidentiary hearing, they can only present things that have been already presented in the current briefs that are out. If he's granted a new trial, then she can ask to do the testing.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the RAV4 is still in existence?
I do. I still think that they have it. I do.
I think, yeah. I mean, they handed back the bones, but
they did agree to let her test it. If the judge hadn't ruled, earlier than they thought she would, they did agree to have her test it. So, I mean, I don't think they would have done that if it was gone. But now whether, it's been tampered with, I don't know.
I found that very odd that Fallon on the one hand is sort of liaising with Kathleen Zellner about testing the RAV, and they're saying yes, we'll do this, and then he gets in touch presumably with Queso and says, we need to start sorting out getting this RAV4 out of the ground, and lo and behold, Angie Sutkovich closes it down. I find that very, very strange.
Yeah.
As if there's been some correspondence.
Right. Yeah, who knows? I mean, there's so much that's been done that you can't trust anything.
Yeah.
And nothing is really surprising at this point. I mean, I read those emails and it's like, is that really surprising anybody? It's not. I mean, we all know they've been hiding things. They've been lying about things. They've been covering things up. It's just the fact that we found more proof of it is interesting. It's just that it's not surprising, though. Unfortunately, we come to expect it at this point. Let's see. Were there any other questions? I know you guys were commenting on things. Don't see anything else. Well, while I'm waiting to see if anybody else has questions, I do want to ask a favor of everybody. I couldn't talk about this, so this is good timing, actually. Mm-hmm. If you watched Mamathon last year, or you watched my channel at all, then you know who Ricky Kidd is.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, they finally went public with this. I found out over the weekend. Ricky had a cardiac event, is how they put it, on Friday. And he went to the hospital because he knew that something was wrong. And they did the stents and they did some other stuff, but he needs open heart surgery. and they were supposed to have the surgery today, and they finally put up a video, and I was like, isn't he supposed to be in surgery? And his wife told me that they rescheduled it for tomorrow.
Wow.
So we're talking about open heart surgery. He has blockages in all four sides, whatever, artery, whatever. Yeah. And he'll have to spend about 5 days in the ICU, and then it'll be an 8 to 10 week recovery time.
Wow.
And Ricky just got married. Ricky and Dawn just got married. And if you don't know who Ricky is, Ricky was wrongfully convicted for 23 years. And he was released a year ago, August. So it's been about a year and a little close to a year and a half. He got married in October, and he and Dawn just had a baby in December. And now this, so it's very scary. And so I just want to ask everybody to keep Ricky in your prayers and think good thoughts, because he is a really great guy. After 23 years in prison, he has such an amazing attitude. He has dedicated his life to advocating for the wrongfully convicted and for justice. And he's going cross country doing talks and everything like that. And so it's just sad to think that, you know, he's been out for a year and a half after 23 years and they knew when they put Ricky in prison that he didn't do it, and they still put him in prison anyway. And fortunately he was able to get out, but he deserves to enjoy his life at this point, especially with having a new baby and everything. So I just wanted to let everyone know, and to keep Ricky in your prayers, because he's a good guy and didn't deserve what happened to him, and he deserves to have a long, happy life now that he's a free man.
Absolutely. Let's hope that the operation is a huge success.
Yeah.
Tomorrow
be recovery time, but you know.
Yeah. There was a question here from T1. Don't know if you've seen the trial for.
Could S.A.'s case end in the same fashion as Sean Ellis' case in trouble? I haven't seen that, T1. I don't know the case, so I couldn't tell you what happened. How did it end?
They basically, the district attorneys decided that he should be granted a new trial, but they decided not to retry him because obviously he was so innocent. But what they said was that we're not going to retry him. He's allowed out. But we could have done, you know, we firmly believe in the guy's guilt. We firmly believe that he's guilty. But, you know, we're because the witnesses are now 20 years older and all this kind of stuff, we're not going to try him again. But we think he's still guilty.
Yeah. I think they're always going to say he's guilty. But, you know, they have to be careful. If he's exonerated, they'll probably still say he's guilty, because they're definitely not going to admit that they did anything wrong, because there's going to be a civil suit.
Yeah.
So they're always going to have to maintain that he's guilty, or they think he's guilty. And even if they don't retry him, it's just like what you said. They can use the excuse that too much time has passed. There've been, you know, too many people have retired, people have died, people have, you know, things that are involved in the case. So they can use that as an excuse to not admit to his innocence.
Yeah. Okay. Here's another one for you. If it comes out Steve's innocent, will law enforcement be prosecuted?
No, they won't be. I mean, technically, there's a I mean, they could be, but I don't see it as happening.
Only for planted evidence.
Sorry, what?
Sorry to interrupt. I think only for like having planted evidence. If they could actually prove the evidence is planted.
Even if they could prove it was planted, they're not going to do anything. There's a police officer in Kenosha that actually admitted to planting evidence that resulted in convicting the wrong person, and he got a slap on the wrist. Yeah. So, I mean, we have precedents here, unfortunately, for cops actually admitting it, you know, doing it, and leading to two people being convicted actually for many years, and then essentially just he lost his job. That was it. And then I don't know if he did any jail time, but if he did, it was very little. But they have qualified immunity for everything else. So,
no, I remember a case of a guy called David Kofod. He was a fantastic bodybuilder, and he was an evidence technician, and he found blood supposedly inside a car, but it obviously wasn't there, because it was a case of a wrongful conviction, that they actually found the real perpetrators of the crime. And lo and behold, it was, well, how did you manage to find somebody else's blood in the car? when they had nothing to do with it. And he actually did
Right.
jail time, did he? David Coford.
I don't know.
It wasn't in Wisconsin, but the actual two people who they were high that had actually attacked the people. It might have been across in Minnesota,
Okay.
but they it was in the the innocence files. It
Yeah,
was one of them.
I am so behind. I have not watched
Sure.
anything. I haven't watched anything true crime since I've fallen out of existence here. The only thing I watch is Marvel, Marvel stuff, and read comic books, and that's like what I do. That's what I've been doing, and I'm working. That's it. I try to keep everything very lighthearted and entertainment wise because
Yeah.
again, stress is very bad for me, and it can.
Exactly.
I don't want to get thrown into another bad episode of my 3PD because it was not fun, and it was a miserable existence, and I couldn't do anything. And now I actually have a life because I actually have a job that I like and I enjoy, and I don't want to screw that up. So yeah. So everything in my life is very, very lighthearted and very, like I said, for entertainment value. So I can't even watch any of the true crime stuff right now because it upsets me too much, and that's risky for me to get that upset about anything. That's why I had to step away from the case because even reading those few emails, I can feel it. And I was like, no, I can't let myself get upset because it's very, very bad for my health, literally.
Now, one of the things that you did in the very first Mamathon
Mm-hmm.
was to interview Michael Cicchini.
Yeah, Cicchini, yes.
Yeah. So I've read both his books, and I'm going to be doing a chat with him on Thursday.
Nice.
So
I never read the False Confession one because it was only available in hardcover at the time.
Oh yeah. It was as he said to me. He said that's as you say, it's hardback because it was meant to be bought mainly by libraries.
Right.
And
I live in a small town. My library didn't have it for sure.
Yeah. So no, I managed to get it, and it wasn't too bad because it was one that had been bought by a library that must have been sort of selling off stock or whatever. But anyway, it was absolutely fantastic book. And any questions for Michael when I speak to him on Thursday?
No, but I will tune in because Michael's a really good guy. He has a lot of good things to say, and he definitely has a good perspective being a defense attorney who's written about the problems with our laws, especially in Wisconsin. So I'll definitely watch. I hate to bring this up because I see Melville was asking about Mamathon 2021. There will not be a Mamathon this year. I know we schedule it for the end of April, but there's a lot of reasons. I won't go into all of them. But big one is that it's a very stressful thing, and we had a lot of stress last year. We had a lot of problems last year amongst people, and I just can't do it to myself. I can't put myself through it, and I can't turn it over to anybody else either because that's my baby. And I hope that, maybe we can do it again. But once we lost Richard, I just knew it'd be very difficult to do because he was a big part of it for me. And and I can't involve myself in the case that much anymore. And without me, there's just, there's not much, there's no Mamathon without me. But also there's no decision in the case. Maybe if there'd been a decision in the case, it'd be different, but there's no decision. And everybody that is still YouTubing, a YouTubing, is that even a word? Everybody that's still doing videos on the case is still around and keeping everybody up to date on the latest information, which is the important stuff. And as Paul just said, he has Michael Cicchini coming on, so, it doesn't mean that there's no content. There's still content going to be there. It's just that we're not going to do a Mamathon this year. And I am very sorry about that, but I am re-upping with the domain name and keeping the website up and everything. So in hopes that maybe we can do one in the future again sometime. But it's just too much right now for me, and it's too hard. And honestly, without Richard, it's just, Yeah.
I mean, I can't say that I was exactly cheering when it was suggested. I think it was the dudes that suggested in the first one. 24 hours. Why don't we go for 48 hours? And I'm like, dude, for goodness sake. You know? So
Right.
it was, as you say, very stressful, trying to put it all together.
And that's just the stuff people see, but all the stuff behind the scenes and all the work that went into it. And especially since I know people really wanted it to be a fundraiser again this year, because last year we tried to have people donate directly to the guys and it didn't work out very well. There were a lot of problems with the system and people internationally couldn't donate. And so my plan was again to do it as a fundraiser this year, but I just can't do it. And since I can't do that, then it's just providing content, and you guys are already doing that. You guys are doing a great job of that. You and Millbilly and whoever else is still doing videos. That's the thing. A lot of people aren't doing them that much anymore. And
as you say, Tracie, it's one of these things where, you know, some people are not there anymore. Obviously, the dude, Ali Apperson, for example, she hosted. I think that's where you got the idea from to do such a long one, because she was doing these 8-hour chats, wasn't it?
Yeah, because I was in one of her chats. We did this marathon, and then I was joking at the endathon. It's not a marathon; it's Mamathon. And then the next day, I was in the shower, and that's where I get all my good ideas. And then I was like, Mamathon. I'm like, that actually sounds like it'd be really cool. It can be a Making a Murder marathon, and maybe we can, because I had been talking to Steve about doing more fundraising for him. I was like, maybe we can make it a fundraiser. Yeah, sure, Tracie, let's do that. And that's what caused all the problems. Because for people that don't know, after the first one, I was accused of stealing money. I was accused of a lot of stuff. And the stress of the things I was accused of and what is what led to my illness. And I now walk with a cane because of the illness that was triggered. And I have an uncurable neurological disorder because of all the stress I was under from people making false accusations. And so for me to do it, and I thought last year would be better if we didn't do it as a fundraiser, but it was still extremely stressful. There was a lot going on, and I can't put my health at risk again, because I literally did nothing but sit in a chair for 16 hours for like 9 months. That's all I did. I couldn't move because of being so dizzy and having such a hard time moving. So yeah, it's just not high on my priority list right now, but you know, you guys are, like I said, you guys are still providing the content. You're still talking about the issues, especially the new issues. I haven't been keeping up with anybody, so I don't know exactly what's going on, but I know you guys are still doing it. And I know that people can still always donate. You can always donate. So maybe you guys can at least start. We're not going to have a Mamathon this year, but maybe put up on screen the PO box or whatever to donate to the guys, or the website, or just point them to the Mamathon website, because we have the links there for access correction. So we can always still encourage people to donate to the guys. And that's just going to have to be good enough this year. Yeah. And I know we have a lot of our hardcore people in here that are going to be like, no Mamathon, what are we going to do? But you guys will be fine, and you guys are covering it, and you're doing good. So
I was going to say, it's going to be one of those things, isn't it? You know, I mean, I listen. I don't know why Ali Apperson needed to take a break. You know, it's not my job to ask why any people. You know, some of them started. We had Andrew Whitehead started. We had Fresh Start Monday. You know, we've had so many people and there's been some, you know, that have been going quite a while. Linda, for example, you know, she's been going ages, you know, and then as you say, we've got Millbilly, we've got Foul Play, we've got, you know, the Rubber Duckies, and all these other channels that have all started off, and you know, we're all just trying to do the same thing. You know, I mean, there's another one. When's Fen and Julie going to get back on the train with their 80 more things? That's what I want to know.
They talk about it all the time, and
well, I hope so.
Fen has been really, really busy. And so I know, because Julie's always giving her the side eye, like, it's your reason we haven't recorded, because they can't find a time to get together to do it. And I know that they still want to. It's just that, you know, real life happens. And I never thought I would take a step back from this case. But when it comes to, especially after Richard died, knowing how much you have to take care of your health. Yeah. And I was just in a very bad place. And when you actually get so stressed out that it cripples you, you know, like literally cripples you. I mean, it puts things in perspective that, like, wow, I have to stay away from stress. And this case, it's stressful for a lot of reasons. It's stressful just because of the injustice and how angry it can make you and how upsetting it can be. But the community itself, even though there are so many wonderful people in this community and I have made lifelong friends along the way, there are really a lot of horrible people that will do anything to try to make your life miserable. And it's sad, but it's true. And in my case, they succeeded and, and really hurting me in a way that I didn't think I could be hurt. And so, it's just the way it is. But I've been happier since I've been off social media. I still care about my group. I still care about it, but I just can't do it. I can't. I just stay away from it. And it's like, I have been in such a better place, just happier emotionally, everything. And I still write to Brendan. I still do everything. So, I'm still involved in some ways. It's just not publicly, and it's a little less low key, or a little more low key.
Well,
so I hope people understand that, because it's not, I miss everybody, and I miss doing the lives, and I miss the interaction, the good stuff I miss, but I can't handle the bad stuff that goes along with it.
Yeah, I'm certainly not apologising if I've misled you earlier by saying, "Can we have a chat?"
And, saying, we have a chat. I'm like, sure.
and then come and do a live. Because
you didn't say that. You just said, "Okay, I'm going to hit the live button now." I'm like, oh, I look like crap, but that's fine. I washed my hair today at least, so that's something.
Hopefully we'll see a lot more of you. Listen, it's been absolutely brilliant having a chat with you. And as I say, I look forward to having a chat with Michael Cicchini. Have I got the pronunciation right?
Yes, Cicchini.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Cicchini. Yeah. I'm really happy to hear that he's going to be on again, because he kept telling me to keep in touch with him and let him know what was going on with the case, but then I just never did. So
sure.
So I'm glad you're having him on. And that's Thursday at what time?
Thursday at just after noon Wisconsin time. 6 o'clock for me. 6 o'clock for me. Noon in Wisconsin. So
that's perfect. Because then I'm done with work. Yeah, I only work in the morning, or not always. Sometimes I work more, but for the most part. Good. Thanks, Alice. I just saw that. You look great. Thank you, Christy. Good thing I'm just this natural beauty. I don't need any makeup, right? Yeah.
Just like me.
Just like you. Yes, we both are. We're both natural beauties. But thanks for everybody for the questions and for tuning in. And even though I wasn't expecting to go live, it was really nice to see everybody and to talk to you, Paul. I keep meaning to message you and check in on you, and then, as with everything, I'm always like, I forget. I don't do something the minute I think of it, I forget.
You can't do it all, can you?
No, but I should be better about that. But
no, then you're fine.
And everybody else that's here that still does videos, Millbilly and whoever else, keep it up. Keep it up for those of us that can't keep doing it.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to say cheerio, and thank you so much, Tracie, and I look forward to seeing you again sometime soon.
All right. Thanks.
Bye. Bye for now.